Hello everyone, I'm Amos, this is Shadowmoose Industries, and this is Blender for Makers. In this series, we're going to be going over some of the basic skills that you need to make physical objects with things like 3D printers and laser cutters. In this tutorial, we're going to go over how you might kit bash an object to combine together two different objects you found on the internet into one for artistic enhancement. Now, this tutorial is not a Blender basics tutorial. For that, I might recommend going to, for example, the Blender 2.8 Fundamentals series released by the Blender Foundation on YouTube 6 years ago. Even though Blender is now on Blender 5.0, the Blender user interface hasn't fundamentally changed since the 2.8 series, and that information is still valid today. However, if I had to cover all of the basics in this video, it would get too long. So I'm going to assume that you know the basics about the layout and how to add and delete objects and snap the 3D cursor around and that sort of thing. If you don't, there's a link to this in the description below. Now, to get our model file, just go to printables.com and search for Dummy 13. Dummy 13 is this great posable action figure designed by Sousaphone, and we can check the license for it and see that it is Creative Commons Attribution Remix Culture Allowed. That means we can download parts and remix them. Similarly, there's this mustache ornament that I found by searching for mustache in printables, and it is also Creative Commons Attribution designed by Nagy Big. Thank you, Nagy Big. Thank you, Sousaphone. Click download on both of these models and then open Blender 5.0. In Blender 5.0, we need to configure a few things before we get started. One is in the Scene tab in the Properties window. Go to Units, set that to 0.001, and set the length to millimeters. And then in the Overlays, set the scale to also 0.001. And now the grid will display squares in millimeters, which means that if we delete everything here with X, select A and X to delete everything, and then we drag and drop our files that we have just downloaded into the window. I'm going to first do the head and leave this scale set to 1. I can then look at the bounding box of it and see that it says 17.5 millimeters by 14 millimeters by 11.5 millimeters. Now, if I open Prusa Slicer, I can drop the same object in there and see that the scale is represented the same way. Back in Blender, we can now add our second mesh that we want to add to this. To do that, I'm going to drop the ornament in the same way. And notice that the scale of the ornament is entirely incorrect for adding to the face of Dummy 13. Also notice that we have this hole that is necessary when it's serving its purpose as an ornament, but not necessary for what we're going to do. So we're going to tab into Edit mode, press 3 to go into Face Select mode, select a face on each side of this little square cut out, and then go to Select Linked Flat Faces, and now we have all faces selected there. Press X, delete the faces, then go to Edge Select mode with 2, or by clicking that button, and hit Alt-Shift-click there, Alt-F to fill the face region, and then click over here the same way, and there we've patched that hole completely in the mesh. Now we're going to turn on snapping. Click this drop down here, snap target for individual elements, face project, align rotation to target. Now we can scale this object down, and as we grab it and rotate it around, it will snap to the surface of the object with the closest face. So now we can place it on this face here, rotate it around, scale it down until it seems approximately right, and we're happy with it. Excellent. Maybe a little bit bigger there. Now, let's turn off snapping, and we will go to an overhead view and just slightly submerge this into the other object, because if you don't, and it's exactly aligned to the object, you can get something called floating point error that will mess up a Boolean operation. Basically, it makes it hard for the computer to know which object is intersecting and not, and that classically screws up Boolean. So just give it a little bit of visible intersection and that problem goes away. Now go back to the solid view. Now we're going to select either of our objects and go to the modifiers tab, click add modifier, generate Boolean. Now turn off the visibility of the other object, select union, and then click this eyedropper data block and select the original object, and then we can see that we have cleanly Booleaned our object and the mesh is still valid. So now what we can do is add the 3D print toolbox if we don't have it. And to do that, we're going to go to Get Extensions, Search Extensions, 3D Print, Install, and now in the 3D Print tab that it is now here, we can select the object that we just Booleaned and click Export. And now if we drag our just exported object into the slicer, we can see that the scale is unchanged, but now we have our modified mesh with that extra little bit of detail. Is it a big difference? No, absolutely not, but it's a difference that we made. And that's the basics of how kit bashing might work.